At a certain point in a man's life, something shifts quietly. It doesn't come from bitterness. It doesn't come from anger. It comes from experience. After years of relationships, expectations, compromises, and emotional negotiations, many older men arrive at a truth they rarely say out loud. Staying single no longer feels like loneliness. It feels like relief. Not because they stopped wanting connection, but because they finally understand what it costs them. If you're an older man watching this, there's a good chance you recognize the feeling. You've been in relationships. You've tried to make them work. You've adjusted yourself. You've given time, energy, emotional space. And at some point, you started asking a quiet question you never asked when you were younger. Is this actually adding to my life, or slowly taking it away? This video isn't about telling men what they should do. It's about explaining why so many older men choose to stay single, and why, psychologically, that choice often makes sense. As men get older, their relationship patterns become clearer. They notice that many of their past relationships followed the same emotional rhythm: early excitement, emotional investment, gradual imbalance, and eventually, exhaustion. They remember how often they felt responsible for keeping the peace, how often they held back their thoughts to avoid conflict, how often their needs became secondary, then invisible. Over time, relationships stopped feeling like companionship and started feeling like obligation. Psychologically, this is where self-protection begins. When a man experiences repeated emotional imbalance, his nervous system adapts. He becomes more cautious, more selective, less willing to enter situations where he knows he will lose himself again. This isn't fear, it's learning. One of the first reasons older men choose to stay single is that they've learned the cost of emotional overextension. When you're younger, love feels like something you pour yourself into completely. You believe that giving more will eventually create stability. But with age, many men realize that overgiving doesn't create closeness. It creates imbalance. Psychology shows that when one person consistently sacrifices their emotional needs, resentment builds, even if it's never spoken. Older men feel this internally. They sense when a relationship requires them to shrink, soften, or silence parts of themselves to keep it intact. Staying single becomes a way to protect their emotional energy rather than constantly repair emotional damage. Another reason older men stay single is the value of emotional peace. After decades of noise, arguments, misunderstandings, emotional tension, silence becomes meaningful. Calm becomes precious. Many older men are not chasing excitement anymore. They are chasing peace. From a psychological perspective, this aligns with emotional regulation. As men age, they become less tolerant of chronic stress. Relationships that bring unpredictability, emotional volatility, or constant negotiation begin to feel physically exhausting. Single life offers control over emotional rhythms. No emotional ambushes, no walking on eggshells, no pressure to perform emotionally when energy is low. Peace becomes a form of emotional safety. There is also the issue of identity. Many men reach later stages of life realizing that relationships often required them to abandon parts of who they were. Hobbies disappeared. Friendships faded. Personal goals were postponed. Over time, the relationship became the center of their identity. Psychologically, this creates identity diffusion. When a person's sense of self becomes tied to another person's emotional needs. Older men who have lived through this understand how difficult it is to rebuild identity after it's been neglected for years. Staying single allows identity to stabilize. It allows men to reconnect with themselves without negotiating every decision. This isn't selfishness, it's restoration. Another truth that rarely gets admitted is how emotionally misunderstood many men feel in relationships. Men are often expected to be emotionally available, but not emotionally complex. Strong but sensitive, stable but expressive. This contradiction creates pressure. Over time, many men feel that their inner emotional world is not fully welcomed, only tolerated when convenient. Psychologically, this leads to emotional withdrawal. Men stop sharing deeply. They stop explaining themselves. They stop trying to be understood. Staying single removes this tension entirely. There is no need to justify emotions or translate inner experiences. Then there is attachment history. Older men often carry attachment wounds they didn't understand when they were younger. Many grew up learning that emotional expression was unsafe or unnecessary. Relationships later in life can reopen those wounds. triggering anxiety, avoidance, or emotional shutdown. Single life allows emotional distance without shame. It allows men to regulate closeness on their own terms. For some, this is the first time they experience emotional autonomy. Another reason older men stay single is realism. With age comes pattern recognition. Men see how relationships often evolve. They notice how initial attraction fades, how expectations increase, how roles solidify. They are no longer idealistic. Not because they are cynical, but because they are accurate. Psychologically, this is cognitive maturity. Older men understand trade-offs. They understand that love does not automatically equal fulfillment. They understand that not every relationship is worth the emotional cost. Staying single becomes a rational choice, not an emotional reaction. There is also the matter of time. As men age, time feels different. There is less urgency to impress, perform, or prove. Many men begin prioritizing how they want to spend their remaining years. Quiet mornings, meaningful routines, personal freedom. Relationships that demand constant emotional labor begin to feel incompatible with this stage of life. Staying single allows time to be spent intentionally, not reactively. One of the most misunderstood reasons older men stay single is that they still value connection, just not at the expense of themselves. This is not about rejecting love, it's about refusing emotional self-erasure. Many men are open to companionship, but not dependency. They are open to closeness, but not control. Staying single until something genuinely aligned appears becomes a form of emotional discernment. There is also a subtle sense of dignity that comes with choosing solitude. Psychologically, choosing solitude is different from being isolated. Isolation feels imposed. Solitude feels chosen. Older men who stay single often experience solitude as grounding rather than lonely. It allows reflection. It allows emotional integration. It allows rest. This stage of life is not about accumulation, it's about clarity. Staying single gives older men space to understand themselves without distortion. It gives them the ability to live without emotional negotiation. It gives them peace without compromise. And perhaps the most important reason of all is this. Older men have learned that love should not cost them their sense of self. They are no longer willing to disappear into relationships just to avoid being alone. They understand that being alone is not the same as being empty. In many cases, it is fuller, calmer, and more honest. This does not mean relationships are wrong. It means that the wrong relationships are no longer acceptable. If you're an older man who has chosen to stay single, there is nothing broken about you. There is nothing immature about you. There is nothing avoidant about you. You are responding to your life experience. You are choosing peace over performance, clarity over chaos, self-respect over obligation. And sometimes, that is the healthiest decision a man can make.